We're in a series at the moment called Anchor Ready, and you will be aware, you've all lived more than a couple of days, that there are times and seasons in our life when things go really well, and following Jesus is actually quite beautiful and simple and wonderful at those times. But there are times when it feels like we're a ship on the sea and the waves are crashing over, and you might think, I don't know if I can make it through this storm. And there's an assurance in the scriptures that God will be with us in the storm, and that we can have an anchor that makes us safe and secure, and we don't have to be tossed around by the circumstances of life, that we have a strength within. And we've been using this verse from Hebrews 6:19, and it says this: we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure, it enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain. The previous 2 weeks we've looked at the anchor of communion, that wonderful celebration where the people of God come together and we celebrate the finished work of Jesus, the body and the blood given for you and I to know complete freedom from our past and to be given life and hope for the future and all that is ahead. God calls us to adventure, doesn't he? He calls us to a life of abundance. He calls us to a life that Jesus said, I've come that you might have life in all its fullness. And our salvation is not just the end of the journey. We don't gather every week and just remember that moment that we gave our lives to him. Every morning, his mercies are new every day. His grace is new every morning. And we are called to adventures, to live on a journey of following Jesus with all our heart on a daily basis. The doorway of salvation gave us access to that. But you have so much more ahead of you. And we looked at celebrating that around communion. And then last week we looked at celebrating that around prayer, what an anchor prayer is in our life. And on Friday we had Pete Gregg with us, and we interviewed him for the evening. And he's written some great inspiring resources on prayer. 20 years ago, God just began to move through a bunch of young guys that just thought, we are rubbish at prayer, we need to do better at this. And they decided they were going to pray all night. And they were going to try and see how long they could go on for. And from that, a bunch of amateurs didn't feel they were very good at it. Lots of lessons to learn. That's gone viral around the world. And now, for the last 20 years, there's not really been a point where there's any moment in the day where one of these 24/7 prayer centers are not praying in this nation, just in this nation, plus the other nations of the world. And it was really inspiring to hear Pete share about that. He's got a great book that he has just brought out called How to Pray. Very empowering, very easy to read, very straightforward, and very helpful. If you struggle with prayer, get that book and you'll find it a great help. But this morning I want to look at the anchor of God's love. I am amazed at how much contention there is around how loved we are by our Father in heaven. And lots of people have an impression of God that he's like some sort of Ofsted inspector. He is continually trying to find problems with us that he can correct and that he can scold us about. And yet, when I read the scriptures, I see a God who fell in love with you the moment you were conceived in your mother's womb. He absolutely head over heels fell in love with you. And that's never changed. And when you were birthed into this world, the value of your life was the price tag that God had put upon you, the value that he had given on your life. And that was meant to be affirmed by your life on this earth. That was meant to be part of your journey, that you continually are in a community that affirms your value and speaks about how special and how unique and how precious you are. how you have a unique story to bring to the world. But you're loved. You're precious. You're loved beyond measure. And that's never changed in terms of God's perspective of you. But so much of this world is so brutal, eh? It draws, we feel like a cash point, and people keep putting their card in us and taking money out. And so many people I meet, they're in like overdraft of their value. They feel they're in a place where they are worth worse than nothing. And I believe that one of the contesting points in our society today, one of the biggest issues in the world we face, is the battle for people's identity, the battle for who we are, the battle for who it is that I am right now. In fact, if you go into the streets, and we've got brilliant teams of people here that work out with those who would be in a situation of being displaced and not having a home, we may call them homeless. The biggest issue that a homeless person has is not that they don't have a roof over their head. It's not that they don't have a meal in their stomach. Those things are important, and we're called to minister to them like we minister to Jesus. Jesus said, you didn't visit me in prison, you didn't clothe me. And he says, when were you in prison, Lord? He said, if you do it for us others, you do it for me. So those things are important, but that's not their primary issue. Because most people I meet that find themselves in the circumstance of being in those circumstances in life feel they deserve to be there. Because their identity is so poor. They have had so much withdrawn from their life. And you can give them a home, you can give them a meal, you can give them some clothes, but they struggle to believe that they deserve that. But they're not the only ones. You probably are, in some way, have had a withdrawal from your life. And you are not fully comprehending just how precious and special you are to the Lord. And in these next few minutes, I want to just talk into an illustration that I believe I've just had a bit of a prompting of the Spirit to bring. It's something we're going to hang this on today. And then we're going to pray. And I'm going to pray that you know the hug of the Holy Spirit around your life, healing you, restoring your value and your worth, and knowing who you are in God. Because I find that this is the fundamental contest. I feel really saddened when I look at some of the events that are taking place in the world. When I was with a bunch of youth leaders for the day yesterday, and hear some of the stories of some of the young people they're working with. And young people's identity is so much under attack. You know, this week, BBC News website, and there were various features on this, it was stated that there are 100 different genders that you can assign and align your life to. And 100 genders. That would have been a long version of Genesis if that was true, wouldn't it? Male, female, on it goes. But you see, I understand what's happening. People feel lost and displaced, and they don't know who they are. And people are trying their best to find a way of creating connection so people can find their identity. But you don't find your identity by making up a new one. You find your identity by knowing your designer. That's how you know your worth. That's how you know who you are. By aligning yourself with an understanding of who made you, designed you, purposed your life. And someone who hasn't just done that in words, but someone who has done that by giving his life to pay for your worth. See, Jesus, when he gave his life on the cross, it wasn't just because he thought, I should have done this differently and I better try and rectify this in some way. He was obsessed with expressing his love to you so that you can know your value and your worth once again. It was his way of saying, I'm not just going to be cozy and say, I've loved you since you've been in your mother's womb. I'm going to show you. And he has given his life for you and I. Romans 1:16 says this. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes, first to the Jew and then to the Gentile. I love those stories that we heard just a few moments ago. I think what would have happened, Josie, just the hand of God is all over your life. And she would not know that if she had not received a aye invitation. That is good news. Having discovered the good news herself, she is not thinking, oh, I've been sort of cobbled into this belief system, and I feel like this is a bit of a hindrance to my life. No, I know Josie's story and journey, and she is now experiencing joy and liberation that she's never known in her life from any other source other than from Jesus. And I think sometimes we think that this gospel, that when we are telling other people, we're on a par with double glazing salesmen. You know, we're trying to shift something into people's lives, trying to convince them of something that they don't really want. And that's not what we're doing. You have keys in your hand to unlock people who are in chains, imprisoned. You have the opportunity to bring revelation that their eyes will open to the bigger picture of the world and the bigger picture of God and the bigger picture of how they can know who they are. You have a hope in your heart that is bigger than anything any institution of this world can offer. The best news in Exeter is only available in the church. It's only available in the gospel of Jesus Christ. It can come from no other place. And if there's something we're seeing in the world right now, is that all of those fix areas that people have thought are politicians, if only we get a different party in, they'll sort it out. They'll work out an answer. If it's only the new prime minister, they'll work it out. If only we get new funding coming into local authorities, they will sort it out. Listen, they are unable to do so because the big issue is that hearts are locked up and they need the gospel of Jesus Christ to liberate them and to set them free. And you have the keys. The blooming keys. But I don't want to offend my work colleagues. What? I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God to bring recovery of sight to the blind, to announce the year of the Lord's favor, to bring freedom to the captives. Or maybe I'll invite a few people. We're trying to make this easy. We're trying to give incentives. Come and have a meal. Come and hear someone share their story. That's great. But listen, the real prize is not the food. It will be outstanding, by the way. It's not the food, though, that's the prize. It's not the stories. It's not getting the autograph of the Exeter City players. That's not the prize. The prize is hearts liberated and set free with the good news of Jesus. I'm trying really hard, aren't I? The picture I had was quite a contemporary one for this moment of the year, because any time now, we'll put away our sandals, our flip-flops, our shorts, and our t-shirts, and we'll be pulling out our winter coats. And as part of our journey, many people in the room will have a little device in their home that when they set the timer on it, it will bring on the heating system in the house. And the heating system is a wonderful thing because no matter how cold it is outside, I have been in my home when there's snow on the ground outside, And I've been in a t-shirt in the home because the heating system changes the environment. It changes the temperature of the home. And the heating system is a wonderful, wonderful device. And of course, how it works, there's a boiler, and the timer unit, it tells the boiler to come on. The boiler comes on and it begins to heat up the water, and it pumps and feeds the water through a whole pipe network, and it feeds it into, in our system anyway, into radiators that are on the walls, and it keeps pumping that hot water through. The radiators get really hot, and then because of what they're made of, they begin to conduct that heat out into the atmosphere, and we take our coats off and we sit in our shorts. Heating systems are wonderful. And when I saw that picture, I was reminded of a story that Jesus told. Let's look at it together. It's found in John's Gospel, chapter 15. It'll appear on the top of the screen now. It says, this is Jesus speaking, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that they will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me." Keep noticing that word, remain. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. I am the boiler, you are the radiator. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. You'll give off much heat. But apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burnt. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourself to be my disciples. On Wednesday just gone, we had the first part of a 3-week course called A Place to Thrive. And on week 1, we went public on a vision statement for the next season of the church. And it's this: to reveal the glory of God in the Southwest and beyond. That's our vision statement. To reveal the glory of God in the Southwest and beyond. I believe we reveal by remaining in God, by remaining connected to Him, and allowing His love to flow through our lives, to allow that love to radiate to those who are around us. That many of you are from various parts of Devon. We are building connections across the Southwest. We've got some exciting initiatives coming up in the next year that are going to be Southwest focused. And we believe it's not going to happen just by us giving off lots of heat in this room. Although it has been a pretty warm summer in this room, eh? Yeah. That's not going to be what reveals the glory of God, though, to the Southwest. It's going to be by you and I being radiators where we are, bringing the heat and the light of the gospel into dark, cold places. You and I are called to be those people. But we have to remain in Him. It's important that we remain. We can't self-engineer this. We can't be self-perpetuating with power. We have to be connected to its source. My radiators at home cannot produce their own heat. They need to be connected to the boiler. And you and I need to be connected to the Lord. Remain. This is not Jesus being political here. This is not Him giving a commentary on the state of the EU and Brexit conversation right now. But He does say you should remain in Him. That's a choice. It's a choice about continuous connection. When I saw this picture, I saw some people go into their controls for their heating system and setting a timetable of when it should come on. I saw some people, because on mine at home, you can put different days of the week, different times of the heating system comes on, and you pre-program it. And some here, some watching online, you've preset for Sunday heat. You remain on Sundays. You stay close on Sundays. 2 o'clock comes and it goes off. And Jesus says, I want you to remain in me 24/7.
Good. Come on.
What does that look like for you? What does it look like for you, no matter what time of day or night, to constantly have the flow of the love of God flowing through your life? Well, I tell you, if you're going to be healed of that identity crisis taking place in your life, if you're going to know your value, you ain't going to get that satisfied or fixed by a couple of hours heating on a Sunday. You need to have a constant flow of the voice of God and the love of God speaking into your spirit and setting you free. We need to remain in him. Apart from him, you can do nothing, it says. Bear much fruit. When I thought about the fruit, of course, we're aware of something we read in Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit. It says this, verse 22 of Galatians 5, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. There are no storms or waves that can combat these fruits. Nothing. They are, if you remain in him, despite, no matter what your circumstances are, despite what's taking place around you, these fruits can grow in you if you remain in him. They're not circumstantially dependent. They are remain dependent. And I think we get it wrong when we look at this list and we make it a list of aspirations of we would like to be more loving, we would like to be more patient, we would like to be more kind, we'd love to be more forbearing. And we make it a wish list, like as if we're some independent radiator on a wall that's got our own power source and we can make this happen ourselves. I want you to know you cannot do that. Except from him, you can do nothing of eternal consequence. You need to remain in him. So the question is, what's your connection like? What's the link like? How established are you to the love of God in your life? Because this fruit grows from those who remain in him. And I believe if we, as an army of God, we decide that we are going to remain in him 24/7, no matter what comes against us, no matter what storms beat around us, no matter what circumstances life brings, we are committed to remain in him, and this fruit will grow in our lives. And I believe the radiant heat that comes off us will impact our environment and will impact the Southwest and the nation and the nations of the world. It's all about remaining. It's all about connecting to him. When we look at love, this fruit of the Spirit of love, we probably reminded of a scripture that's often read at weddings. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 onwards, it says this: love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. That's the love of the Father over your life. He is patient. He is kind. He does not envy. We could go on. I'm reading John Wesley's journals at the moment. Fascinating read. Of course, he had much to do in this area as well. And some of the testimony to that is lots of these little chapels that are in many of the rural communities around the southwest, as of course are around the nation. One of John Wesley's, and he was a fiery preacher. He was a tough preacher. And he used to preach against vanity. Now, I don't think this would translate very well into 21st century Britain, because he would use some examples of vanity to challenge people. So he would say, if you, and I'm going to see people feeling all squirmish now, he would say, if you wear any jewelry, it's a sign of your vanity. If you have makeup on, guys or girls, it's a sign of vanity. Now, I don't think that would translate very well in today's world, not because we're soft selling it, but simply because they're not sort of necessarily expressions of a vanity in a heart. They're just fashion statements and so on. So I don't want you to get hung up in that. But in the day, he would preach against that strongly. People would be taking off their rings, giving their lives to Jesus, taking off their necklaces, giving their life to Jesus. And there was a mother who was very annoyed with her daughter. And her daughter wore lots of jewelry. And John Wesley was passing through the village where they lived. And the mother thought, I am going to take my daughter to meet John Wesley, and he will have a go at her. He will tell her her sins. He will correct her for her wayward ways. So he took his daughter to where John Wesley was. And the mother thrust her daughter's hand in front of John Wesley. Her hand had multiple rings on it. John took her hand, covered in rings, and he said, what beautiful hands you have. What beautiful hands. Just a few weeks ago, Nita and I were going to see someone who, they're not in a great place with God right now. And we knew they knew that. And we said on the way, we're going to look at the hands. We're going to look at the beauty of what's beneath the rings. We're going to look at what's below. We're going to look at what's fundamental about their lives. See, when we're called to bring this good news of the gospel, we don't go back to the Garden of Eden where they fell. We go back to the original design of God's intention. Fearfully, wonderfully, beautifully made. We're not here as a church to tell people how rotten they are. Now, what am I saying? Am I saying we're not really bothered with sin? Of course we are. Jesus came and gave his life to deal with that fundamental thing in our lives. But I'm talking about going beyond that. The prophetic call of the church is to see the hand and to see what's underneath the struggles, what's underneath the pain, what's underneath the mistakes, what's underneath the shame, what's underneath the mess of their lives, and to say, you have beautiful hands. I believe that's the fundamental call of the people of God. A number of years ago, you would have heard me say that there have been times in the journey of the church here where some people have said to me that certain people shouldn't be allowed to come and gather on our Sundays because of some of the rings they've got. Not the real rings, but the metaphorical rings. Some of the struggles they've got. How are we going to model to young people? What are we going to tell our kids when we've got all these rings glistening in our gatherings? How are we going to tell them about this? And one Sunday I stood up on this stage and I said, I've been thinking about, some people have been petitioning me that there are certain people shouldn't be allowed to come into church. And I've been thinking about it, and I've come to the following conclusion. That there's one condition that I think we could stop some people coming in the church. And this is the condition. Every Sunday, I'm going to stand at the entranceway of the church, as soon as the doors open, and I'm going to have a clipboard. And on the clipboard, I'm going to have a series of questions. Series of questions about your thoughts, your actions, and your attitudes. If you fail one of those questions, I'm going to have to say to you, I'm really sorry, but you can't come in. And then, when everybody else has turned around and left, I'm going to have to do it myself with an honest heart about my attitude, my thoughts, and my actions. And I want you to know that even as the lead pastor of this church, I'm going to fail. Because I'm here because of grace. I'm here because love wins. I'm here because His grace is greater than my sin. I'm here because He has looked beneath the rings and seen I have beautiful hands. So I said, that's the condition, that we could stop some people coming. Or we do have another alternative. We stop being obsessed with the rings. And we look at the hands. Church, you're going to meet people this week, and their fundamental issue with God is going to be from their broken identity that they think, if He does exist, He would never love me. And you're the fix that God has provided for that. Don't preach at them. Show them their worth. Show them who they are. Love them unconditionally. Pour yourself into them. And when you've blessed the socks off them, bless them more. One of our values here is that we love extravagantly. Pour yourself into them. So I invited the church. They didn't seem very keen. No, that's not what sharing our faith is. It's seeing that they have beautiful hands and telling them and rejoicing and causing the liberty of that message to be infectious. But if you're looking at your rings, you're probably not going to be able to say that to others. And that's why the enemy comes in against the people of God to condemn us. It's probably why one of the biggest struggles you have to worship on a Sunday is feeling unworthy. It's probably why you don't share your faith with others, because you feel you're not really a good example. You're the best example of grace that your friends will ever see. Let's reveal the glory of God to the southwest and beyond. At the end of this meeting, pick up those cards at the back. And don't sort of apologetically go into work and say, oh, I'm really sorry, but we've got this really weird thing happening at church that, it's going to be a bit of food, it'll be all right, we won't be too weird. What are you doing? There are people selling double glazing better than that. You have to remind yourself, I am carrying a life-changing, identity-healing message of hope and life. I want you to come to this. Will you come to this with me? Will you please come along to this? You will love it. Grab those leaflets. Invite people. Let's stand together, shall we? Just still your heart a moment. Maybe close your eyes to shut out the distractions. And just thank God that he looked past your sins. That he loves you. The moment you were conceived, he fell head over heels in love with you. And he's committed to you. I'm going to ask for a choice of confessions around this room. I'm going to ask that rather than battle against some stuff, I'm going to ask that you begin to give thanks to God for who he says you are. I am loved beyond measure. That's going to be painful for some of you to say that because you really don't feel it. And that's where a renewing of our mind needs to take place. I'm not an inadequate daughter of the Most High or a son of the Most High. I'm loved. Heaven celebrates me, rejoices over my life. I'm called to be part of the family of God. I've been set free from all of my shame and sin. If you're comfortable with this, I'm going to ask you to lift your hands and just to celebrate those things over your life. Just say, God, reveal them fresh to me as fresh revelation, deeper than I've ever known before. Deeper than I've ever known. God, there are some people who have been traveling this road for years and they really love you, but they really feel like inadequate. They really feel like they're poor Christians. And God, I just pray you'll break that now with a revelation of your love. I pray you just shatter those lies over their life that's just seeking to crush their effectiveness. It's stopping them radiate the glory of God because they don't think they deserve it. God, would you reveal that to them afresh? Set them free from every lie, every condemnation of the enemy. God, just liberate hearts in this place. It was for freedom that Christ has set you free. Oh, God. Now just be still. Say, God, would you come by the power of your Spirit, fill my life afresh. I want to abide in you 24/7. I don't want to fix my timer for certain days, certain times. I want to abide in you. Fill me afresh with your love. Just while you pray that, if there's anybody here or anybody watching online and you have never experienced the love of God, or maybe you have in years past and you've gone away from him, and this morning as I've been speaking, as we've been worshiping together, there's just something inside you that you can't quantify, but it feels safe, it feels healthy, it feels wholesome, but you know something needs to change. And that change is that a barrier that stands between you and God needs to be broken down and dealt with. And that barrier is the mistakes of your past. And that's why Jesus died. To pay the price so that you could be free. He gave his life on a cross. It wasn't an accident. It was because he loves you. It was because he wanted to pay the price for you. He wanted to become someone who would suffer so that you could be free. If you this morning would like to give your life to Jesus and receive his love and forgiveness, I'm going to pray a simple prayer, and I'm going to invite you to pray this after me in your mind, and God will hear your thoughts. And it goes like this: Jesus, I thank you that you love me. I'm sorry I've left you out of my life and I've done my own thing and I've made mistakes. Please forgive me. Wash all of that shame away. Remove it completely from my life, never to return. And replace it with your love. Fill me with your Spirit that I might follow you. In Jesus' name. Just while everyone else is praying with their heads bowed and their eyes closed, if you prayed that prayer this morning in this room or online, I'd love to know who you are, because we've got some things we'd love to help you with. Would you just lift your hand, and when I've seen it, I'll ask you to put it down again. I'm not going to call you out or embarrass you, but once I've seen it, I'll acknowledge it. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else this morning? Thank you, madam. Is there anyone else this morning? The greatest decision you will ever know in your life. If you've put your hand up and I've not seen it, please place it a bit higher so I can see. Father, I thank you for these precious 2 people this morning that have said they want to receive your mercy and your forgiveness and your love. I pray now that heaven will hug their lives and fill them with an understanding of who they are in you. Father, I thank you. The promise of your word is that if we will confess our sins, you are faithful and you are just to forgive us.